Last time I spoke about OutSystems and SAP, I was at an SAP conference. There were about 10 people in the room. Nobody really cared, I think. But this looks a lot better. Thank you all for coming here. So the title is The Mysteries of SAP and S/4HANA Revealed, Unravelling the Complexities of Migrating Using Low-Code. It's a bit of a mouthful and maybe a bit ambitious for the 20 minutes I've allocated, but let's give it a shot, right? My name is Roy van der Kerkhoff. I am a solution architect, SAP OutSystems at NovioQ. And, I love SAP, really. I like it a lot. I have been working with SAP for over 20 years, and it's like an ever-evolving world. And the moment you think you get the hang of it, a new release comes out, often involving a new development language, and you start learning again. And I really love to learn as a developer. And I've learned them all, like the classic ones like ABAP, Smart Forms, SAP Script. But SAP also had a number of web development environments. WebDimpro for ABAP, WebDimpro for Java, BSP, Floor Plan Manager, Lumira. There's really quite a few out there. And they all have a couple of things in common. One, as a developer, it is really hard to work with, to develop anything in those platforms. And the second is, as an end user, they really don't perform very well. But then came Fiori, SAP's brand new, flagship, state-of-the-art web development environment. And I was really excited. I think this time they're going to get it right. However, that was really a turning point for me. When I started working with Fiori, it was really a huge disappointment. There was lots of scripting and really painful testing that in the end, reluctantly but finally, had to come to the conclusion that while SAP is the #1 business solution provider in the world, with massive development teams scattered across the globe with some of the brightest minds on the planet, they are actually really bad at building web development environments. And that revelation opened up a whole new world to me, really. I could look at SAP differently. I could look at SAP technology with more distance. And with a shock, I realized that the same might apply to HANA. And I took an interest and started researching the topic. And I am really afraid, I must tell you, that HANA, which is qualified by SAP as the best database in existence, in fact so good that it's impossible to benchmark against any other database because of its unique nature, that HANA is really not the best database in existence. And, sorry, you sort of caught me there. And apart from the technology research, I think you could realize that too if you ask yourself one simple question. Like if HANA was that good, why doesn't Uber run on HANA? Why doesn't Salesforce run on HANA? In fact, why doesn't any software that's not SAP software run on HANA, right? And what on earth made SAP think it would be a better database builder than companies that have been specializing in the area for decades? Why would it venture in that direction? Was it to increase license revenue? Possibly. The best story I heard so far is that it's due to a fight between Larry Ellison of Oracle and Hasso Plattner of SAP. They're both really fanatic sailors, and they own huge, massively expensive sailboats. And apparently during a regatta where they competed, the SAP boat broke down, the mast collapsed, there was really a serious injury on board, and on sea, on open sea, you help each other. And they flagged down the first boat, the Oracle boat, and they just sailed a circle around them, took pictures, and sailed off again. And that made Hasso Plattner so furious that he lowered his pants, mooned the Oracle boat, and vowed to put HANA out of SAP. I'm not really sure the story is true, but I heard it from a lot of people, and I actually really like it. So. But it would explain, maybe, why the S4 only HANA. Normally, SAP runs on any database. And if you look at S4HANA, its technology, normally there's OpenSQL, you're right, in ABAP, and it translates through a sort of a layer to the database connected. That same layer is in S4HANA. It just only allows HANA connections now, but it's easy to open up. But that might be the reason. Now, if you look at Fiori, maybe the same logic applies here. Why only Fiori? Why would SAP even venture in that direction? Why there's so many companies that are better at building web and app development environments than is SAP? Maybe that's personal too. Maybe Paulo Rosado owns a sailboat. I don't know. Anyway. Did any of you ever read the book, The Rise and Fall of the Great Empires by Paul Kennedy? Nobody? No, not many people have actually. The general idea of that book is that empires tend to fall victim to imperial overstretch. A good example being Napoleon, who invaded Russia. It stretched his supply lines beyond control and brought ruin upon his army, and eventually his empire. As the IT moguls are today's empires, I think the same theory might apply to Amazon, Google, and indeed SAP. SAP trying to dominate both the ERP market, the database market, and the web and app development market will eventually lead, I think, to imperial overstretch. And S/4HANA is a really good example already, because customer take-on on S/4HANA is rather low at the moment. S/4HANA forces everybody to move by 2025, which is 5 years away from now. If all these companies, all the hundreds of thousands that haven't moved yet, are to move today, still there's not enough skilled resources in the world to make that happen before that end date. So already logically today you can calculate that it's impossible to reach that deadline, meaning SAP will have to move at some date that deadline to 2028, maybe 2030, and that will be a massive defeat for SAP, a massive defeat. But until that day, companies need to make choices about S/4HANA. And that is a difficult exercise already. I speak to a lot of people in different companies, and they have the same worries. We have been told by SAP to move to S/4HANA, but we can't get the business case written to justify the investment. Suppose you're an enterprise architect. How can you justify moving to S/4HANA, which is a massive change to your technological core of your systems of records, with all the risks associated? Well, you don't get much functionality capabilities in return. If you're an IT manager, how can you justify spending millions and millions of euros on that move if you only get a new database? And as a CIO, how can you justify spending years on moving to S/4HANA, while at the same time your business, your market is at risk of being disrupted? Or your competition is spending the time, resources and money in innovation instead of migration. So what to do in such an uncertain world? Normally you would postpone your decision until the roadmap is more clear or the value more apparent. But in this time, SAP leaves you no choice. Oh, this is really bad. It's actually Brigitte Janssen from OutSystems testing whether I think put my phone on mute. Anyway, can I give it to you? So where was I? Right. So you have to move. SAP makes you move. And to OutSystems, finally, right? How can OutSystems help? OutSystems in an enterprise SAP environment can serve as your innovation layer on top of SAP. We sometimes call that bar model development. So you have your slowly evolving SAP core that crunches your numbers consistently and without flaw. And on top of that, you have an agile innovation platform, like OutSystems, for lightning quick app development, adding value and innovation to your end customers. SAP and OutSystems combined can be an alternative to the roadmap that SAP has laid out for you. Right, sorry. While still keeping a keen eye on a 2025 deadline, meaning you can still move to S/4HANA later on, in the unlikely event that SAP will hold on to that deadline. Well, how? Well, let me tell you then. Well, looking back on decades of SAP development, most companies have accumulated so much custom code that a migration to S/4HANA is really impossible. So if you have such a heavily extended system with so much custom code in it, the only realistic option left to you is a greenfield approach. So you have to start afresh. And this time you want to do that right and avoid the same mistakes you made in the past. So this new S/4HANA system, you want to keep as clean and without custom code as possible, as vanilla as possible. And at the same time, you want to be able to choose the best technology out there in your company, regardless of the supplier. And you want the freedom to replace any of these platforms when a better one comes along that better fits your strategy. And you want that done, integrated seamlessly, and without any license headaches. SAP wants to do SAP wants to do that differently. They want you to use SAP-only solutions tied together with Fiori front-ends and integrated with SAP technology as well. However, SAP has proven that it's not the most customer-friendly partner sometimes, with its dubious indirect access cases against their own customers and the harsh 2025 deadline. So the last thing I think you want to do in this case is increase your dependency with SAP, but you want to reduce that. That will be a logical path to take. And low-code can help you here do that. Your first goal should be to reduce your custom code you have in your system. So you analyze everything you have. If it's obsolete, obviously you remove it. If it's part of your core SAP integration and implementation, you keep it. But any add-on functionality that can be removed, you put into a new application. Oh, I should have shown this one earlier, I think. These are really expensive, you can tell, right? Anyway, I put a small visualization there to give you an idea of how this looks like. It's not an architectural picture in any way, but it can be worked out. I think you understand it. Right. So the first goal, here you have SAP as you buy it. And over the years, you acquire a number of add-on functionalities here. So what you want to do is rebuild these things outside of SAP, preferably in OutSystems, where it's an OutSystems conference, but in something else. And you want this coupled tightly together to your SAP backend. OutSystems has its native SAP connector that is really, really very powerful and will come in extremely handy if you have to move to S/4HANA later on. I will talk a bit about that later on. So you move all these things out, and as you see, the number of code reduces drastically. So you've brought your SAP systems much more back to the original state as it was. There will be custom code in it, but that's really part of your implementation. And on top of that, you see you have a reporting module that will be based on personalization, your authentication, you log in as a Belgian buyer, you see report 1 and 3 and only Belgian data, for instance. And that feeds data from SAP in this instance, which doesn't make sense because normally you would put, let's make some room, a business warehouse next to it to read your data from for your reporting. So to migrate, you have these independent applications that are now connected to your SAP system through standard RFC connections. And these have a number of advantages, the .NET connection. One, you can connect to any SAP system out of the box and reuse any functionality that's already exposed, which is quite a bit. Second, you can make that connection dynamic, meaning you can determine that connection at runtime. If you have multiple SAP systems in your landscape, that comes in really, really handy. And what else? That was something else. Right. And as the on-premise S/4HANA, like the private cloud version of the on-premise one, they still have that same .NET connector as a basis. So in the NetWeaver stack, you still have that connector in place. You still have all the BAPIs you're already using in place. So moving from SAP to S/4HANA in this case, all these applications will keep on working by simply changing the IP address to the S/4HANA system and changing the system user and the password. If you have your master data set up correctly and have done that migration well. So that would be the move. Change the connections, you're there. So this way you buy your time to make the decision later on to move to S/4HANA, because this one will save you so much time in your migration to S/4HANA. So that's where OutSystems can really, really help. And talking about the reporting section there, the total cost of ownership of S/4HANA can be really big if you have a really, really sizable S/4HANA database. Gigabytes, terabytes are extremely expensive if you talk about HANA. So you want to have a column store there next to it, which is your BI, your data lake, but it should not be a HANA one. There's so many good databases out there that are much cheaper than HANA and just as well or even better. So you would have your reporting section on top. If you replicate your data, maybe each night, so you have 1 day stale data, you can, because you built your reporting section out of SAP, you can read day-old data from your S/4HANA system, you can read everything else from your column store, and you combine the two seamlessly in your OutSystems reporting application. This is not theory, this has been done already by customers. This is something that's just a reality already. And if you keep this S/4HANA as small as possible, meaning you remove any stale data, any data that's not going to be updated anymore, just you update this regularly, you can set up an infrastructure, but if you can then do the combined reporting with this like low value in terms of a license cost, column store, combining it with the expensive HANA gigabytes, you might save up to 45 to 90% of your HANA cost. And for big companies with a huge terabyte, that will run into the millions you can save each year. Right. And this is all with low code. There's not a single scrap of .NET or Java you need to write. This is all being done with OutSystems technology, drag and drop out of the box. That's basically my story so far. I still have 1 minute left, I think, before the...
Yeah, we could do, let's do some questions. Who's an SAP customer in the audience? Quite a few, I would have mentioned. Yeah, so questions from the audience. Okay, I'll come over to you next.
Hello, I just want have a question. To connect OutSystems to S4HANA, you need to build, to use a web service in SAP. So it means development, no?
If you use the .NET connector, which is already part of the SAP stack, you don't need to build web services. SAP advises to use OData services for the SAP gateway, but in fact SAP for inter-company, inter-system communication only uses the .NET connector itself. So talking to solution manager, taking data for other systems, SAP itself only uses the .NET connector. But if you want to expose data for apps, they advise to use the OData services, but there's no technical reason for it, really. Right.
And a quick plug for our OData connector that Paolo mentioned during the keynote, for those that were present. What was the next question back here?
What are the best client case studies or studies that we could drill into to look into the details what you just showed there?
I can't name any customers, but if you come over to our booth, we can have a chat
about
that.
Excellent.
Other questions in the room for Roy? So I don't know if, I think if Roy's boat got in trouble, I'm assuming he has a yacht too. I'm not sure that Hasso Plattner would stop to help you out, but maybe he would.
No, never know.
Sure. So round of applause for Roy, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Hold on.